Hey everyone, and welcome to another Explainer. Today, we're going to distill some actual legal statutes and data to help you master Florida's 3 authorized real estate brokerage relationships. Whether you're a student prepping for your state exam or just a buyer or seller wanting to know exactly who's in your corner, understanding these legal frameworks is absolutely crucial. So, let's jump right in. Here's a quick look at our agenda. We're going to start with the representation dilemma. Then we'll break down the 3 legal relationships: transaction broker, single agent, and no brokerage relationship. After that, we'll compare their duties side by side and wrap things up with a rapid review quiz. Section 1. The representation dilemma. Understanding who works for who. Okay, so picture this. You hire a real estate agent to buy or sell a home, and you probably assume they're your devoted champion, right? You just figure they're fighting for your best interests, keeping all your secrets, and working to get you the absolute best deal possible. But depending on the legal relationship that's actually established, does your agent work exclusively for you? Well, in Florida, the answer to that question is defined by some pretty strict statutory guidelines. To put things into perspective, if you look at a real Pearson VUE exam score report, you'll see that authorized relationships, duties, and disclosures makes up a massive chunk of the testable domains. That really just proves how critical this topic is, not just for passing the exam, but for protecting the public and making sure everyone really grasps exactly how representation works.
Section 2. Default. Transaction broker. The presumed baseline in Florida.
By default, Florida law actually presumes all licensees are operating as transaction brokers. What does that mean? Well, it means they provide a limited form of representation where the agent does not represent either party in a fiduciary capacity. They can assist the buyer, the seller, or even both of them in the very same transaction.
So the real kicker here is that while they must deal honestly and fairly, account for funds, use skill, care, and diligence, present all offers, and disclose hidden defects that materially affect the property's value, they only offer limited confidentiality. They don't give you undivided loyalty. Because they might be facilitating the transaction for both the buyer and the seller, they literally cannot work to represent one party to the detriment of the other. So no, they can't help you ruthlessly lowball the seller if they happen to represent them too.
Section 3. Fiduciary, single agent, maximum representation, and trust.
Now this is where you step into a true fiduciary relationship of trust and confidence. When an agent acts as a single agent, the broker represents either the buyer or the seller as their principal, but absolutely never both in the same transaction. By law, disclosed dual agency is expressly revoked in Florida. You are either representing the buyer or the seller, but there is no way you can be a fiduciary for both. To easily lock these heavy fiduciary duties into your memory, the ones exclusive to a single agent, just use the memory aid COLD. C-O-L-D. Confidentiality, obedience, loyalty, and full disclosure. Obedience means they must follow your legal instructions. Loyalty means your interests come before anyone else's, even the agent's. Full disclosure means they've got to tell you everything they know that could possibly affect your decision. And confidentiality? In this relationship, it is absolute, unlike the limited version we just talked about in a transaction brokerage.
Section 4. DIY, no brokerage relationship, the absolute bare minimum.
In this scenario, you're kinda on your own. The agent provides zero representation or negotiation strategy to the customer. However, state law still legally requires them to stick to 3 basic duties. They must deal honestly and fairly, account for any entrusted funds, and disclose all known facts that materially affect the value of residential real property which are not readily observable to the buyer. So even with no representation, honesty and transparency about property defects remain a strict legal mandate.
Section 5. Comparing the duties. A side-by-side contrast of the continuum of trust.
Okay, I'm going to slow down right here because I really want you to absorb this contrast. Notice how a single agent owes you strict obedience, undivided loyalty, and full disclosure. They are your exclusive advocate. But a transaction broker, which, remember, is the presumed default relationship in Florida, only owes you limited confidentiality and a duty to deal honestly. Limited confidentiality means a transaction broker cannot disclose that a seller will accept less than the asking price or that a buyer will pay more than their written offer. They keep things fair, but they are not fully advocating for your sole benefit either. It's a huge distinction.
Section 6. Rapid review quiz. Test your knowledge for the state exam.
All right, let's see how much you retained. I'll read each question aloud and give you a brief pause to think about it before giving the answer. Let's start. Which relationship is the presumed default in Florida if no written agreement is established? Take a second.
The answer is transaction broker, because the law automatically assigns this limited representation role unless a written disclosure specifically establishes a single agent or no brokerage relationship.
Question 2. Which relationship explicitly demands the fiduciary duties of confidentiality, obedience, loyalty, and full disclosure? Think back to our memory aid.
It's the single agent, because those cold duties are legally owed exclusively to a principal in a fiduciary capacity.
Question 3. Which relationship promises limited confidentiality so an agent won't accidentally reveal a seller's absolute bottom line price to a buyer? What do you think?
The answer is transaction broker. They have to facilitate the deal neutrally without acting to the detriment of either side, ensuring basic secrets like pricing motivation remain totally private without requiring absolute fiduciary loyalty.
Final question. If an agent is just providing basic honesty, accounting, and disclosing property defects to a buyer they don't actually represent, what is the relationship? That is the no brokerage relationship, which is the absolute bare minimum legal standard when dealing with any member of the public in Florida real estate. Well, there you have it. Now that we've totally demystified Chapter 475 of Florida Statutes and explored the exact legal parameters of these relationships, you really have to ask yourself a very important question. When you buy or sell your next home, what level of trust and representation will you demand from the person holding the keys? Are you going to stick with the default transaction broker, or will you demand the full cold duties of a single agent? Because honestly, if you don't know who is fighting for your interests, it might just be nobody. Keep that in mind for your exam and your next real estate transaction. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and happy learning.